The sun blazed down on the turquoise water, the kind of day when the sea glittered like a field of diamonds. I had been training quietly for weeks, my arms toughened from countless hours paddling against the waves. What started as a simple pastime had grown into an obsession. Mastering the canoe, learning how to read the current, and finding rhythm with the ocean's pulse. It was on this bright morning that a challenge came unexpected, almost absurd. A soldier, broad-shouldered and confident, stepped forward from the docks. His reputation was well known. He had served in the Navy, battled storms, and trained in endurance drills that broke ordinary men. His gaze was steady, his voice carrying authority. "I hear you think you're fast," he said. "Let's test it. A race!" Out past the reef and back. Canoe against canoe. I hesitated only for a moment. It wasn't arrogance that made me accept, it was determination. To prove myself not only against the sea, but against someone who embodied discipline and strength. The canoes were brought down to the water, sleek wooden crafts built for speed. On the shore, a small crowd gathered, curious to see this contest. A lone civilian daring to race a soldier of the sea. We climbed into our canoes, each gripping a paddle. The official gave us a signal. 2 flags waved, one red, one white. At the drop, we launched forward, slicing into the waves. The first stretch was chaos. Water splashed against my face as the soldier surged ahead, his strokes powerful and precise. Years of military drills were clear in every motion. His canoe cut through the sea like a blade. For a moment, I worried I had underestimated him, but I had studied the ocean, learned its moods. I knew that brute strength alone wasn't enough. The waves were tricksters. They could carry you forward if you listened, or hold you back if you fought them. Instead of copying his raw force, I leaned into rhythm. Stroke, breathe, stroke, breathe. My paddle dipped with grace, matching the rise and fall of the swells. Where the soldier pushed against the current, I flowed with it. Slowly, my canoe began to close the gap. The reef loomed ahead, jagged rocks just beneath the surface. The soldier tried to power straight across, muscles straining, but the currents there were treacherous. His canoe bucked and swerved as the water resisted him. I, however, steered wide, circling around the reef. It added distance, but the current on that side was smoother, like a hidden highway in the sea. My canoe skimmed forward, each stroke building speed until I emerged level with him once more. The crowd on shore erupted in cheers, their voices carrying faintly over the water. "Impossible!" I heard the soldier mutter, his eyes flicking toward me. The return stretch was the true test. The sun beat down, muscles burned, and every ounce of strength threatened to drain away. The soldier gritted his teeth, doubling his pace. His canoe surged ahead once more, water spraying from the furious rhythm of his paddle. But I remembered my training. Endurance beats power in the long run. My strokes stayed steady, conserving energy. I timed each one with the push of the waves, letting the ocean lend me strength. The soldier's bursts began to falter, his arms stiffening, his form breaking. With the shoreline in sight, I made my move. Digging deep, I poured every ounce of will into the paddle, each stroke a thunderclap against the sea. My canoe leaped forward, gliding past his as the crowd's cheers grew louder. The final meters blurred into pure effort. Heart pounding, lungs on fire. I thrust forward one last time, the nose of my canoe slicing across the finish line just ahead of his. The roar from the shore shook the air. I collapsed against my paddle, chest heaving, sweat mingling with seawater. The soldier drifted in behind me, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, silence stretched between us. Then he smiled a hard, honest smile. He extended a hand across the water. "You earned it," he said. "Strength can win battles, but wisdom wins wars. Today, you showed both." I clasped his hand, feeling the respect in his grip. The crowd cheered again, but what mattered most was the quiet acknowledgement in his eyes. I hadn't just beaten a soldier, I had beaten the sea alongside him. And in that victory, I discovered something greater than winning, the knowledge that discipline, patience, and trust in the ocean's rhythm could carry me farther than brute strength ever could. The crowd's cheers still echoed as I stepped onto the sand, legs trembling from the effort. The soldier climbed out of his canoe just behind me, water dripping from his arms, chest rising and falling like a man who had fought a battle. We both stood there for a moment, drenched in sweat and salt, the sea stretching endlessly behind us like a stage that had just witnessed something ancient. People swarmed around, slapping me on the back, some lifting me onto their shoulders in celebration. But through the noise and laughter, my eyes kept returning to the soldier. He wasn't sulking, wasn't angry. Instead, he watched me with quiet calculation, as if he were studying not just my victory, but the way I achieved it. Finally, when the crowd began to disperse, he approached. "You surprised me," he admitted. "Most men try to overpower the sea. You listened to it." I nodded. "You taught me something too. Strength alone won't win, but without strength, strategy doesn't matter." For the first time, his stoic expression cracked into something like respect. "The ocean respects balance. You've earned mine." The villagers decided to turn the race into legend almost immediately. Word spread faster than the tide. A civilian bested a soldier at sea. They told it as if I had tamed the waves themselves. Children ran around with sticks for paddles, pretending to reenact the race. Merchants retold the story to travelers, and soon even people I had never met greeted me with, "Ah, you're the one who beat the soldier." But victory brought more than fame. It brought a challenge I had not expected. 2 days later, as I mended nets near the dock, the soldier returned not in his training clothes, but in full uniform, polished and commanding. He carried a sealed letter marked with the insignia of his unit. "The commander heard of our race," he said. "He doesn't believe a civilian could best one of his men fairly. He's organizing a rematch in a larger scale." I frowned. "Another race?" "Yes," he replied, his tone grim. "A regatta. Multiple soldiers, open sea, stronger currents, higher stakes, and he expects you to compete." The idea twisted my stomach. The race I had won was brutal enough, but to face not just one trained soldier, but several in harsher waters, it felt impossible. Yet something in me stirred on, ember of determination. I hadn't beaten the sea by chance. I had earned it. "I'll do it," I said, surprising even myself. The following week was a blur of preparation. At dawn, I trained on the open waters, practicing balance and rhythm. I studied tides, memorized wind patterns, and pushed my body harder than before. Villagers rallied behind me, offering advice, food, and even an upgraded paddle carved from strong, light wood. When the day came, the shoreline was alive with energy. Soldiers in identical canoes lined up beside me, their uniforms crisp, their faces set with focus. The commander himself stood at the dock, arms crossed, eager to prove his men superior. The signal was given. Canoes launched forward like arrows loosed from bows. Immediately, the difference was clear. These were no ordinary opponents. Their synchronization was flawless, their power unmatched. The sea churned with their effort, water spraying high as they cut through waves. I stayed calm. Instead of chasing their pace, I slipped into my rhythm, steady, deliberate. My strokes looked almost lazy compared to their ferocity, but I knew the truth. The ocean rewards patience. Halfway through the course, as we entered rougher waters, cracks appeared. One soldier capsized, another veered too close to the rocks. The commander shouted from shore, his voice lost in the wind. I pushed forward, reading the current like an old friend. The waves grew taller, the wind screamed, but my canoe danced with the water instead of against it. Slowly, impossibly, I began to overtake them. The final stretch was chaos canoes colliding, paddles thrashing, men shouting as exhaustion weighed them down. But my arms, though burning, found strength in rhythm. Each stroke became a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. When I crossed the finish, the shore erupted again. I wasn't first by a wide margin, but I wasn't last. Out of a dozen soldiers, I finished near the top, higher than anyone had expected. The commander looked furious, but even he couldn't deny what had happened. A civilian had held his own among trained men of the sea. Afterward, the soldier, the one I had first raced, found me again. "You didn't just win today," he said quietly. "You proved that skill isn't owned by the uniform. It's earned, stroke by stroke." From that day forward, I was no longer just the one who beat a soldier. I was something else entirely. A man who had faced the ocean on equal footing with warriors and found my place in its endless rhythm. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of my story with the sea. It was only the beginning.